The nurse was fired from the hospital after being accused of negligence with a millionaire patient. 3 months later, there was a luxury car near her humble home. The rhythmic beeping of cardiac monitors echoed through the pristine corridors of St. Raphael Medical Center. Emma Carter moved with practiced efficiency between patients' rooms, her crisp white uniform a stark contrast against her olive skin and dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. At 31, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had found her true calling. "Ms. Carter, they need you in the East Wing. Mr. Parker's stats are fluctuating again," called Sarah Thompson, the head nurse whose silver-streaked hair and commanding presence had guided Emma since her first day 8 years ago. Emma nodded, quickly finishing her notes before heading toward the VIP section of the cardiology department. The East Wing was unofficially known as Millionaire's Row, where private rooms the size of small apartments housed the elite of New York society. "How bad is it?" Emma asked, falling into step beside Sarah. "Nothing critical yet, but Dr. Reynolds wants his star patient monitored closely." Sarah lowered her voice. "And between us, the family is making a fuss again. Apparently, the regular nurse isn't attentive enough for their liking." Emma suppressed a sigh. The Parker family's reputation for being demanding was well known throughout the hospital. Robert Parker, 78-year-old real estate tycoon and philanthropist, had been admitted 3 weeks ago with severe cardiac arrhythmia. His condition was stable but precarious, requiring constant monitoring. "I'll take care of it," Emma said simply. "I know you will. That's why I recommended you." Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "Just remember, these people aren't used to hearing no about anything." As Emma approached the private suite, she could hear raised voices. A woman with impeccable blonde highlights and a designer suit was berating a young nurse whose eyes had welled with tears. "Completely unacceptable. Do you have any idea who my father-in-law is? I want someone competent in charge of his care. Immediately." Emma stepped forward. "I'm Emma Carter, cardiology specialist. I'll be taking over Mr. Parker's care." She kept her voice professional but firm. "Jenny, would you please update me on the patient's status?" The young nurse gratefully rattled off the vital signs while the well-dressed woman, Stephanie Brooks, according to the chart, watched with narrowed eyes. "And you believe you're qualified to handle my father-in-law's care?" Stephanie asked, looking Emma up and down. "I've been specializing in cardiac care for 8 years, Mrs. Brooks. I graduated top of my class and have assisted in over 200 cardiac procedures." Emma met her gaze steadily. "Mr. Parker will receive my utmost attention." Something in Emma's calm confidence seemed to momentarily disarm Stephanie, who merely nodded curtly before clicking her way out on expensive heels. Inside the private room, monitors surrounded a frail figure in the bed. Robert Parker's once commanding presence had been diminished by illness, his skin papery and pale against the luxurious Egyptian cotton sheets. Yet his eyes, when they opened at Emma's approach, remained sharp and assessing. "Another new face," he commented, his voice surprisingly strong. "They keep changing my nurses like socks." "I'm Emma Carter, Mr. Parker. I'll be your primary nurse from now on." She checked his IV line with practiced movements. "How's your pain level today?" "Manageable," he said, watching her work. "Where are you from, Emma Carter?" "Born and raised in Queens," she answered, noting his heart rate normalizing as they spoke. "My parents still live there." "And what do they do?" Emma hesitated only briefly. "My father was a construction worker. He's retired now. My mother worked as a laundress." She expected the usual reaction from wealthy patients. A subtle withdrawal, a faint condescension. Instead, Robert Parker's eyes crinkled with genuine interest. "And they produced a cardiac specialist. They must be very proud. They sacrificed everything for my education," Emma said simply, adjusting his medication drip. "I was fortunate to receive a merit scholarship for my specialization." Over the next few weeks, Emma's shifts were rearranged to make her Robert Parker's exclusive nurse. What began as routine care evolved into something unexpected. The old man was sharp-witted despite his condition, eager to hear about Emma's day, her patients, and her views on everything from hospital administration to city politics. "You remind me of someone," he told her one evening as she checked his vitals. "Someone I knew long ago." Emma smiled, used to his occasional bouts of nostalgia. "Someone good, I hope." "Yes," he said softly, his gaze distant. "Someone very good indeed." She didn't notice Stephanie Brooks watching from the doorway, eyes narrowed at their easy rapport. The next morning, Dr. Jonathan Reynolds, the hospital's director and head of cardiology, summoned Emma to his office, tall and distinguished with prematurely silver hair. Reynolds had a reputation for brilliance matched only by his ambition. "Emma, I understand you've developed quite a connection with Mr. Parker," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "I provide him the care he needs, Dr. Reynolds." Of course," he smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "The Parker family is very important to this hospital. Their donations funded our new research wing." "I understand, sir." "Good. Then you understand why we need to be particularly attentive to their concerns." He leaned forward. "Mrs. Brooks has expressed some worries about her father-in-law becoming too attached to you." Emma kept her expression neutral. "I maintain strictly professional boundaries, Dr. Reynolds." "I'm sure you do." His tone suggested otherwise. "Just remember your position here. Not everyone gets the opportunity to work at St. Raphael's, especially those from humble backgrounds." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air between them. That evening, Emma found Robert examining a small gold medallion that caught the light as it dangled from his fingers. "A family heirloom?" she asked, noting how his weathered fingers caressed the engraved surface. "Something like that," he murmured, quickly tucking it away. "Emma, would you do an old man a favor? My personal physician left some papers in my study at home. I'd like you to retrieve them for me, privately." The request was unusual, but the earnestness in his eyes made Emma nod. "Of course, Mr. Parker. When would you like me to go?" "Tomorrow morning I'll have my driver meet you." He gripped her hand suddenly, his fingers surprisingly strong. "You're the only one I can trust with this, Emma. Remember that?" Later that night, as Emma walked to her car in the staff parking lot, she felt a presence behind her. Turning quickly, she caught a glimpse of a tall figure disappearing behind a column. The sense of being watched followed her home to her modest apartment, where she absent-mindedly touched the simple silver medallion she always wore beneath her uniform, her good luck charm. Since childhood, unknown to Emma, forces were already in motion that would shatter her carefully built life and reveal secrets buried long before she was born. The sleek black town car waited exactly where Robert had promised. Emma glanced at her watch. 6:47 a.m., well before her scheduled shift. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, tipped his cap. "Miss Carter, I'm Frank. Mr. Parker sent me." The 20-minute drive to the Parker mansion on the Upper East Side passed in silence. Emma gazed out the window as modest neighborhoods gave way to tree-lined streets with imposing brownstones. Then finally, the exclusive enclaves where old money quietly displayed its power. The Parker estate stood behind wrought iron gates, a limestone fortress of old-world elegance. Frank escorted her through a side entrance. "Mr. Parker said you'd know what to look for in his study," Frank offered. "Third door on the right. The family is still asleep, so..." Emma nodded, understanding the need for discretion. The study was a gentleman's sanctuary. Leather-bound books, a massive mahogany desk, and the lingering scent of expensive cigars. On the desk sat a manila envelope marked "Confidential" as she reached for it. Her eyes caught a framed photograph. A younger Robert stood beside two young men, his sons, presumably. The taller one had his father's commanding presence, while the younger possessed a carefree smile and eyes that seemed oddly familiar. A creak outside the door sent her heart racing. She quickly tucked the envelope into her bag and moved toward the exit. "Finding everything you need." Stephanie Brooks blocked the doorway, her silk robe and perfect early morning makeup suggesting she'd been awake and waiting. "Mrs. Brooks? Mr. Parker sent me to retrieve some medical documents." At this hour, how dedicated. Stephanie's smile never reached her eyes. Strange he didn't mention it to the family. "I'm just following my patient's instructions." Emma tried to step past her. Stephanie didn't budge. "You know, I've been watching you with my father-in-law. Quite the connection you've developed. I treat all my patients with respect, I'm sure. But Robert seems unusually attached to you." Stephanie tilted her head. "A nursing school scholarship, an accelerated specialization. You've come a long way from Queens." The implied accusation hung in the air. Emma felt her cheeks flush. "If you'll excuse me, I need to return to the hospital." "Of course." Stephanie finally stepped aside. "Just remember, Miss Carter, The Parker family has built its fortune by recognizing when someone is overreaching. Back at St. Raphael's, Emma found Robert awake and alert, watching the door as if expecting her. "You got it?" he asked. She handed him the envelope. "Mr. Parker, if this is something that concerns your family, it concerns many things." He patted her hand. "In time, Emma, first. I need to be certain." His eyes strayed to the silver medallion that had slipped out from beneath her uniform. "That's a beautiful piece," he said quietly. "Family heirloom." Emma tucked it back. "Just a good luck charm. I've had it since I was little." Robert's expression changed subtly. "May I see it?" Hesitantly, she removed the chain and placed the medallion in his palm. His fingers trembled as he traced the intricate pattern on its surface. "Where did you get this?" His voice had dropped to a whisper. "My parents said it was with me when I came to them. I was adopted," she explained. She, surprised at herself for sharing this with a patient, Robert closed his eyes briefly, then returned the medallion. Before he could speak again, the door opened, and Dr. Reynolds entered with Stephanie close behind. "Mr. Parker, how are we feeling today?" Reynolds's professionally warm tone didn't match his cool glance at Emma. "Ready to go home, Jonathan," Robert replied. "Miss Carter takes excellent care of me." "So I've heard." Reynolds checked the monitors. "Still, your latest EKG shows some irregularities. We should adjust your medication." Emma frowned. "The readings were stable this morning." Reynolds' smile tightened. "Perhaps you missed something. Mrs. Brooks mentioned you were out on an errand earlier." The implication was clear. She'd neglected her duties. Emma started to protest, but Robert interrupted. "I sent her, Jonathan, my request." Reynolds nodded, but Emma didn't miss the glance he exchanged with Stephanie. "Nurse Carter, prepare a 40 ml dose of cardizem," Reynolds instructed, writing the order. Emma checked the chart, alarm bells ringing in her mind. "Dr. Reynolds? Mr. Parker's current dosage is 30 ml. The jump to 40 seems... Are you questioning my orders, Nurse Carter?" Reynolds' voice carried just enough edge to draw attention from a passing orderly. "No, sir, I'm confirming them." Emma kept her voice steady as she prepared the medication. She'd document her concerns afterward. As protocol required, Robert watched the exchange with shrewd eyes, but remained silent as Emma administered the higher dose. By that evening, Emma was finishing her shift when alarms erupted from Robert's room. She sprinted down the hall, reaching him seconds before the code team. "He's in V-fib," she called out, immediately starting chest compressions. The next minutes blurred into controlled chaos. Reynolds arrived, barking orders. Stephanie hovered in the doorway, her face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. Eventually, they stabilized Robert, but he remained unconscious. "What happened?" Reynolds demanded, scanning the chart. His blood pressure dropped suddenly after the medication change. Emma reported, "You administered the cardizem." Reynolds' tone was oddly pointed. "Yes, exactly as ordered." Something in his manner made Emma add, "As witnessed by the floor nurse," Reynolds' jaw tightened. "We'll need to review everything, Mrs. Brooks is understandably concerned about the quality of care her father-in-law received today." The next morning, Emma was called to the administration office. Sarah Thompson waited outside, her face grave. "They're saying you administered the wrong dose," Sarah whispered. "There's no record of Reynolds ordering 40 ml. That's impossible. I documented everything. The order shows 30 ml in the system. Your override to 40 is the only record." Ice filled Emma's veins. "That's not what happened." "I know." Sarah squeezed her arm. "But it's your word against the hospital directors." Inside the office, Reynolds sat beside the hospital administrator, and a woman Emma recognized as legal counsel. Stephanie Brooks stood by the window. "Miss Carter," the administrator began, "we're investigating a serious medication error that occurred under your care." "There was no error," Emma stated firmly. "Dr. Reynolds ordered the dosage increase himself." Reynolds shook his head sadly. "Emma, I understand you're under pressure, but Mr. Parker's chart clearly shows I maintained the 30 ml dose. The system logs your override." "That's not possible." Emma's voice rose. "You specifically ordered 40 million. I questioned it. Are you suggesting Dr. Reynolds would intentionally harm a patient?" Stephanie interjected. "Or that hospital records were somehow altered?" The room fell silent. "Put that way," Emma's claims sounded paranoid. "We've reviewed your work history. the administrator continued. Several incidents of challenging authority, questioning established protocols. I advocate for my patients, Emma said, realizing how futile this battle had become. St. Raphael's cannot risk patient safety, he concluded. We're terminating your employment, effective immediately. The Board of Nursing will receive our report regarding the medication error. You're taking away my license. Emma felt the room spin, based on records that were changed. Please clear your locker today, the administrator continued as if she hadn't spoken. Security will escort you. As Emma walked the long corridor for the last time, clutching a box with her few possessions, she caught sight of Sarah's sympathetic face and the averted gazes of colleagues she'd worked alongside for years. Outside, rain began to fall, soaking through her thin jacket. Her fingers found the silver medallion at her throat, her supposed good luck charm. For the first time in her career, Emma Carter wept, not knowing that the medallion connecting her to a past she'd never known had just set in motion both her destruction and her eventual redemption. 3 months could change everything. Emma stared at the rejection email, her 15th with numb acceptance. This one, like all the others, contained vague regrets about not being the right fit, despite her impressive qualifications. No one mentioned the incident at St. Raphael's directly. They didn't need to. The tiny apartment she now shared with her mother in Queens felt suffocating. Medical journals she once devoured lay untouched on the coffee table. Her scrubs and stethoscope remained packed away in a box she couldn't bring herself to open or discard. Emma, honey, her mother's voice, weakened by years of chronic bronchitis, called from the bedroom. Did you eat something? Yes, Mom, she lied, closing her laptop. Just finishing up some applications. Patricia Carter sat propped against pillows, oxygen tubes circling her face. At 63, she looked a decade older, her body worn from years of hard work and inadequate health care. The irony wasn't lost on Emma, a cardiac specialist who couldn't properly care for her own mother. Any luck today? Patricia asked, then immediately began coughing. Emma adjusted her oxygen flow and checked her pulse. Nothing yet, but something will come through. Her mother squeezed her hand. I'm so sorry. Sweetheart, after everything you worked for, don't worry about me. Emma forced a smile. How's your breathing today? The routine check gave Emma something to focus on. Besides her dwindling savings and mounting bills, her mother's medication alone cost nearly $300 a month, money they no longer had. After ensuring her mother was comfortable, Emma grabbed her tote bag. I'm heading to the market. Need anything special? Just you, safe and home soon. The local farmer's market had become Emma's unlikely workplace. Her table, tucked between a produce stand and a bread vendor, displayed neatly arranged embroidered handkerchiefs and small linen sachets. The delicate needlework, a skill her mother had taught her during long childhood evenings, now provided their only income. Morning, Emma, called Greta from the vegetable stand. Beautiful day, ain't it? Emma nodded, arranging her modest wares. The embroidery earned barely enough to cover groceries. Certainly not rent or medications. By midday, she'd sold 3 handkerchiefs and a sachet, about $20 worth. As she considered packing up early, an elderly woman approached, leaning heavily on a cane. Excuse me, the woman said, her breathing labored. Are you the nurse everyone talks about? Emma tensed. Had her disgrace followed her even here? I was a nurse, she answered cautiously. My grandson has a terrible fever. Been 2 days now. The woman's eyes pleaded. The clinic has a 6-hour wait, and we don't have insurance since my daughter lost her job. Emma hesitated. Providing medical advice outside a licensed facility was technically illegal, especially for someone under investigation by the nursing board. I really can't. Please, the woman whispered. He's only 4. 20 minutes later, Emma found herself in a cramped apartment 3 blocks away. The little boy lay listless on a worn couch, his forehead burning with fever. His mother hovered anxiously nearby. 103,8, Emma announced after checking his temperature. A quick examination revealed swollen tonsils and telltale white spots. It looks like strep throat. He needs antibiotics. We can't afford the urgent care copay, the mother admitted. I already lost a day's wages staying home with him, Emma thought quickly. I know someone at the free clinic on Delaney. I'll call them. Outside, Emma made a call. Not to the clinic, but to Sarah Thompson. Their friendship had survived Emma's dismissal, though they spoke infrequently to protect Sarah's position. "Penicillin for a 4-year-old with strep? I'll drop some samples at the usual place," Sarah said without hesitation. "Emma, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine," she answered automatically. "Thanks for this, Sarah." An hour later, Emma returned with the medication and clear instructions. As she was leaving, the boy's mother pressed $40 into her hand. "Please," she insisted when Emma tried to refuse. "It's worth every penny not to sit in the emergency room all night." That night, Emma counted her day's earnings, $73, more than she'd made in the past 3 days combined. Something shifted in her mind, a solution she'd been avoiding. The next week passed in a blur of discreet house calls. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about the skilled nurse who would come to your home for a fraction of what urgent care would cost. Most patients offered what they could, sometimes cash, other times food or services. Mrs. Abernathy from the corner store provided groceries in exchange for monitoring her diabetes. Mr. Lopez fixed their leaky faucet after Emma helped with his mother's bed sores. Emma kept careful records and never attempted anything beyond her training. For serious cases, she insisted they go to the hospital. Still, she lived with constant anxiety about being reported one evening as Emma checked a young woman's surgical stitches. The woman asked, "Why aren't you at a fancy hospital? You're better than any doctor I've seen." Emma's hands stilled momentarily. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. After the patient left, Emma sat at her small kitchen table, calculating expenses versus income, even with her underground practice growing. They were falling behind. Her mother needed a new oxygen concentrator, and the landlord had hinted at a rent increase. A knock at the door startled her. Emma peered through the peephole to see a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. Her heart froze. Someone from the nursing board, or worse, a lawyer from St. Raphael's. Steeling herself, she opened the door. "Can I help you?" "Miss Carter, I'm Martin Wilson, an investigator." He offered a business card from a private agency. "I'd like to discuss Robert Parker." "Mr. Parker is no longer my patient." Emma kept her voice neutral despite her racing pulse. "I haven't had any contact with him since leaving St. Raphael's." "That's precisely what interests me." Wilson's eyes assessed her small apartment. "Mr. Parker has been asking for you, repeatedly, according to my sources. I wasn't aware he'd regained consciousness. Limited consciousness. Mostly incoherent, but your name comes up often." Wilson shifted his weight. "The family finds this concerning." Of course they did. Emma's hand instinctively reached for her medallion. "I treated Mr. Parker professionally and compassionately, as I did all my patients. Yet he formed a peculiar attachment to you, even sent you on personal errands." Emma's mind raced. How much did they know about the envelope? "I have nothing further to share, Mr. Wilson. Please leave." After he departed, Emma paced the small apartment, anxiety mounting. If the Parkers were investigating her, what else might they do? Could they somehow discover her underground practice? Her mother's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Emma? Who was that man?" Emma hadn't realized Patricia was awake and listening, just someone asking questions about a former patient. Patricia's eyes, still sharp despite her failing body, studied her daughter. "About the rich man? The one when everything went wrong?" "Yes." Patricia struggled to sit up. "There's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you years ago." "Mom, you need to rest." "No." Patricia's voice was suddenly stronger. "It's about your medallion, about where you really came from." Emma froze. "What about it?" "That fancy family, the Parkers, they're connected to you." Patricia coughed violently, waving off Emma's attempt to help. "The woman who arranged your adoption? She worked for them." The world seemed to tilt beneath Emma's feet. "What are you saying?" "I don't know all the details, but that medallion, it came with you, and there was money, every month to keep quiet about where you came from." Emma sank onto the bed, her mind racing to connect impossible dots. The way Robert had looked at her medallion, the strange familiarity she'd felt with him, the photograph of his sons in the study. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "We were afraid of losing you." Tears filled Patricia's eyes. "And then you seemed so happy with your life. Your career, we didn't want to confuse you with mysteries we couldn't explain." A harsh coughing fit seized Patricia. Worse than usual, Emma quickly reached for the rescue inhaler, her medical training taking over despite her emotional turmoil. As she helped her mother breathe, Emma's mind cleared with sudden purpose. Whatever connection existed between her past and the Parkers, she needed answers. Not just for herself, but for the ailing woman who had raised her with love, regardless of blood. Outside their window, a sleek black car idled across the street. Emma didn't notice it, nor the man watching their apartment with calculated interest. The black car had been parked across the street for 3 days. Emma noticed it first on Tuesday morning while heading to Mrs. Gonzalez's apartment to check on her newborn. By Thursday, she was certain someone was watching her. She considered calling the police, but quickly dismissed the idea with her underground practice. Bringing any official attention was too risky. Instead, she varied her routes, took sudden turns, and even ducked through the back door of the corner bodega, once to shake the tail she felt certain was following her. That evening, as Emma returned from her last house call, a retired teacher with uncontrolled hypertension, heavy clouds unleashed a summer storm. She hurried up the block, medical supplies hidden in her ordinary tote bag, rain soaking through her thin jacket. The black car was gone from its usual spot. Relieved, but still cautious, Emma jogged the last few yards to her building. As she fumbled for her keys, a tall figure stepped from the shadows of the entryway. "Miss Carter!" Emma stumbled backward, keys held between her knuckles as an improvised weapon. The man raised his hands in a placating gesture, his expensive suit now visible under the flickering hallway light. "I'm not here to harm you," he said, his voice carrying the polished tones of privilege and education. "I'm Alexander Parker, Robert Parker's son." Emma stared, recognition dawning. He was the taller son from the photograph in Robert's study, mid-30s, with his father's commanding presence but softer features. Unlike the photo, his face now carried the tight lines of stress and exhaustion. "What do you want?" Her voice came out sharper than intended. 5 minutes of your time. Inside, preferably. He glanced at the rain. "Unless you prefer we have this conversation in the hallway." Against her better judgment, Emma led him into the apartment, grateful her mother was sleeping. The small living room, with its worn furniture and piles of medical textbooks, felt suddenly shabby under his assessing gaze. "Why are you here, Mr. Parker? Did your investigator not get enough information?" Alexander's eyebrows rose slightly. "Martin can be overzealous. I apologize if he upset you. What does your family want from me? I'm already ruined professionally. Isn't that enough?" Something like discomfort flickered across his face. "I've been in Europe for the past 6 months, conducting cardiac research in Stockholm. I only returned last week when my father's condition worsened. I had nothing to do with what happened to your father." "Perhaps?" His eyes, so much like Robert's, studied her intently. "My father regained limited consciousness 3 days ago. The first word he spoke was your name." Emma's breath caught. "He's awake. Intermittently. Mostly confused." Alexander moved to the window, looking out at the rain-slicked street. "Before his cardiac incident, my father gave me a letter with instructions to open it only if something happened to him. I opened it last week." He turned back to her, expression unreadable. "The contents were unexpected. He claimed you are related to our family." The medallion at Emma's throat suddenly felt heavy. "How?" "He believed you are my brother Sean's daughter." The room seemed to tilt. Emma steadied herself against the wall. "That's impossible. I've never met any of you before St. Raphael's. My brother died 10 years ago. If my father's theory is correct, you would have been about 21 at the time." He watched her reaction carefully. "Too old for the adoption story to make sense, I know. But my father included the results of a private DNA test. It shows a familial match to the Parker line." Emma sank onto the couch. My adoptive mother, told me recently that my adoption was arranged by someone connected to your family, that money was paid to keep it quiet." "When were you born, Miss Carter?" "October 12, 1993. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. "Sean was 20 that year, studying at Columbia." He reached into his jacket, removing an envelope. "My father hired a private investigator to look into your background before his hospitalization. The results are concerning." Emma took the envelope with trembling fingers but didn't open it. "Why would he do that?" "Initially, I suspected it was because you had somehow discovered your connection to our family and were using it to get close to him. Alexander's admission was blunt. The Parker fortune attracts opportunists. Anger flashed through Emma. I didn't even know I was adopted until I was 12. I worked for everything I had. So I've gathered. His tone softened slightly. My father's investigation paints a different picture than the one my sister-in-law has presented. Stephanie Brooks, Emma said bitterly. Alexander nodded. She claims you manipulated my father for financial gain, that you deliberately administered the wrong medication. That's a lie, Doctor. Reynolds changed the dosage himself. I questioned it at the time. Reynolds? Alexander's expression darkened. He and Stephanie have become quite close in my absence. The implication hung in the air between them. Emma's mind raced, connecting dots. You think they deliberately sabotaged your father's treatment? And framed me for it? I don't know what to think, Alexander admitted. That's why I'm here. I need to understand what happened. And my father clearly trusted you. Emma opened the envelope, scanning the contents. Pages of background information on her life, her education, her work at St. Raphael's, and at the back, a DNA report confirming a first-degree relation to the Parker family. This is impossible, she whispered. I would have been told. Not if someone wanted to keep your existence a secret. Alexander moved closer, his voice dropping. My brother Sean died in a car accident 10 years ago. He'd been driving recklessly, according to the police report, but my father began questioning that narrative recently. Why? He wouldn't say, just that he'd discovered inconsistencies. Alexander hesitated. May I see your medallion? Emma's hand flew to her throat. How do you know about that? My father mentioned it in his letter, said it was identical to one he gave Sean on his 18th birthday. Slowly, Emma removed the chain and handed him the silver medallion. Alexander examined it, then pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. In it, a young man with a carefree smile, Sean Parker, wore an identical medallion. This doesn't prove anything, Emma said, but her voice lacked conviction. It could be coincidence. In my experience, Miss Carter, coincidences rarely stack this high. Alexander returned the medallion. My father wanted to tell you himself. He was planning to publicly acknowledge you after his 80th birthday. Once his new will was finalized, the implications hit Emma like a physical blow. You think Stephanie found out? And took steps to prevent it? Alexander's voice hardened. With Reynolds' help, Emma stood abruptly, pacing the small room. This is insane. I can't be a Parker. I'm Emma Carter, a nurse from Queens. You can be both, Alexander said quietly. DNA doesn't lie. No, but people do. She faced him squarely. Why should I trust you? Your family destroyed my career, my reputation. Now you appear with wild claims about my parentage. Alexander met her gaze steadily. I understand your skepticism. I shared it initially. That's why I've spent the last 3 days observing you. You were following me. Emma felt a surge of indignation. I needed to see who you really are, away from Raphael's. A hint of admiration crept into his voice. An underground medical practice serving those who can't afford proper care, at significant legal risk to yourself, not the actions of someone motivated by greed. Before Emma could respond, a harsh coughing from the bedroom interrupted them. Alexander raised an eyebrow. My mother, Emma explained, already moving toward the sound. She has chronic bronchitis, made worse by years working with harsh chemicals. Alexander followed, stopping in the doorway as Emma tended to Patricia, helping her with the oxygen mask and checking her vitals with practiced efficiency. Better, Emma asked softly when the coughing subsided. Patricia nodded weakly, then noticed Alexander. Her eyes widened with recognition, though she'd never met him. You look just like your father, she whispered. I saw him once, years ago, when he came to check on Emma. Emma froze. What? When? You were about 5, Patricia admitted. He watched you playing in the park, made sure we were taking good care of you. Alexander and Emma exchanged stunned glances. The revelation added another layer to the already complex puzzle. We should continue this conversation tomorrow, Alexander said, moving toward the exit. I'll come by in the morning. There's more you need to know. After he left, Emma sat beside her mother's bed, mind whirling with questions. If what Alexander said was true, if she was truly Sean Parker's daughter, then everything she believed about herself was built on a foundation of secrets and lies. And somewhere in those secrets might lie the truth about what really happened to Robert Parker the day her life fell apart. Emma barely slept. She spent most of the night sorting through a battered shoebox her mother directed her to from the top shelf of the hall closet. Inside, beneath faded birthday cards and school photos, lay an envelope yellowed with age. "Your adoption papers," Patricia had whispered before finally drifting to sleep. "And the other things, the things they gave us." The official documents were straightforward. An adoption finalized through a private agency that, according to a quick internet search, had closed 15 years ago, but it was the other items that kept Emma awake. A bank statement showing monthly deposits of $2,000 from an obscure holding company called KP Enterprises, dating back to her infancy. A handwritten note with instructions never to seek information about Emma's biological parents, and a photograph of a young woman with Emma's eyes, holding a newborn, on the back. Written in elegant script, "Megan and Baby, October 1993. Morning light was filtering through the blinds when Alexander's knock came. Emma opened the door, still wearing yesterday's clothes. "You didn't sleep," he observed. "Would you?" She let him in, gesturing to the kitchen table where she'd laid out her discoveries. "My mother gave me these." Alexander examined each item carefully, his expression darkening when he reached the photograph. "This woman, Megan. She worked for my family, a household assistant my mother hired. Your mother, Catherine Parker." Emma recalled seeing the name in newspaper articles about various charity functions. "Yes," Alexander's jaw tightened. "She died 4 years ago, pancreatic cancer. Was she involved in whatever happened?" "I'm beginning to think so." He tapped the KP Enterprises statement. "These initials match my mother's. Catherine Parker." Emma poured them both coffee in chipped mugs. "Tell me about Sean, my father, apparently." Alexander's face softened with memory. "Sean was 4 years younger than me. Brilliant but restless. Creative. He wrote poetry. Played guitar badly." A smile flickered. "He was the dreamer while I was the responsible one. Medical school. Carrying on the family legacy. What happened to him? Officially, he lost control of his car on a rainy night. Crashed into a tree." Alexander's voice grew distant. "He'd been erratic in the months before. Distracted. Secretive. My parents assumed drugs. It was 2014. He was 31, and he'd always been adventurous." Emma did the math quickly. "I would have been 21. "Yes, whatever happened between Sean and your mother, Megan, would have been years earlier." Alexander hesitated. "My father's investigator believes Megan was let go from our household sometime in 1993. Your birth year." The implications hung between them. Emma sipped her coffee, mind racing. "So your mother knew about me, arranged my adoption, paid my parents to keep quiet." "It appears so. But why? The Parkers aren't exactly the first wealthy family to have an illegitimate child." "That's what I can't figure out," Alexander admitted. "Why the secrecy? Why not just support you openly, or at least acknowledge you to Sean?" Emma's phone buzzed with a text. "Sorry, I need to check this. I have patience." "Patience." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "You're still practicing." Emma gave him a defiant look. "People in this neighborhood need medical care they can't afford. I help where I can." She read the message. Mrs. Alvarez's son's fever was worse, and quickly texted Sarah about possibly getting pediatric antibiotics. "I have to go," she said, grabbing her tote bag and the makeshift medical kit she'd assembled from supplies Sarah had been smuggling her. Alexander stood. "I'll come with you." "Absolutely not. These people trust me. A stranger in an expensive suit would terrify them." "Then I'll wait here. There's more we need to discuss." Emma hesitated, glancing toward her mother's room. "I'll keep an eye on her," Alexander promised, his voice gentling. "I am a doctor. Remember." Against her better judgment, Emma agreed and hurried out. Alexander spent the morning alternating between checking on Patricia, who remained asleep, and examining Robert's investigation files more thoroughly. The private detective had been thorough, tracing Emma's life from her adoption through her nursing career. Her scholarships, her accolades, her exemplary work record, all documented meticulously. What struck Alexander most was the detective's notes about Emma's patients at St. Raphael's, Interviews with former patients revealed a consistent pattern: extraordinary empathy, brilliant diagnostic instincts, and an obsessive attention to detail regarding medication and treatment protocols. Exactly the opposite of someone who would make a careless medication error. His phone rang. Sarah Thompson, the head nurse he'd quietly contacted yesterday. "I've been reviewing the medication logs," Sarah said without preamble. "Something's not right. The electronic record shows Emma entering the 40 milligram dose as her decision, but I spoke with the pharmacy tech who prepared it. He clearly remembers Dr. Reynolds specifying 40 milligram verbally. Can the tech testify to that? He's afraid. Reynolds is powerful, and the tech needs this job." Sarah paused. "There's more. The security cameras in your father's room were supposedly malfunctioning that day." "Conveniently," Alexander muttered. "Except the hospital's security system backs up to a secondary server for insurance purposes. Those files are automatically archived off-site." Alexander sat straighter. "Can you access them?" "Not directly, but I know someone in it who owes me a favor." Sarah's voice lowered. "This is my career on the line, Dr. Parker. I understand, and I'll make sure you're protected, Sarah." After hanging up, Alexander noticed Patricia watching him from the bedroom doorway, leaning heavily on a walker. "You look just like your father did when he was younger," she said, making her way slowly to a chair. Alexander helped her sit. "Did you meet Robert Parker before yesterday's revelation?" Patricia nodded. "Once, when Emma was about 5, he came to the playground where she was playing. Just watched her for a while, then approached me, asked how she was doing in school, if she needed anything. Did he say why he was interested in her?" "No, but he left an envelope with cash before he left." Patricia's eyes grew distant with memory. $10,000, said it was to ensure her education wouldn't be limited by our finances. "And my mother, Catherine Parker. Did you ever meet her?" Patricia's expression hardened. "No, only her lawyer. He brought the original papers and the first payment, made the threats." "Threats?" Alexander's voice sharpened. "If we ever told Emma where she came from, the money would stop and they'd take her away." Patricia's hands trembled. "We'd tried for years to have a child when they brought Emma to us. This perfect, beautiful baby. We agreed to anything." Alexander processed this information silently. The level of manipulation was extreme, even for his image-conscious mother. "Did Sean, my brother, ever try to contact you or Emma?" "Not that I know of." Patricia looked troubled. "The lawyer said her parents had died, that she had no family left." Alexander was formulating his next question when the apartment door burst open. Emma rushed in, face flushed. "We have a problem," she announced, dropping her bag. "Mrs. Alvarez's neighbor saw Reynolds leaving their building just after I left. He had a woman with him, blonde, designer clothes. Stephanie," Alexander confirmed grimly. "They were asking questions about me, showing my hospital ID photo." Emma's voice trembled with barely controlled rage. "They're trying to catch me practicing without a license." Alexander stood. "They're getting nervous, trying to discredit you further before we can build a case." "It gets worse." Emma met his gaze directly. "Mrs. Alvarez said the woman mentioned offering a reward for information about the fraudulent nurse, who's been endangering the neighborhood." Patricia gasped. "They can't do that." "They can and they will." Alexander's voice hardened. "We need to move more quickly than I anticipated." "What's your plan?" Emma demanded. "First, we get you somewhere safe. My father's investigation contains sensitive information that could damage Stephanie and Reynolds if exposed." Alexander checked his watch. "Then we meet with someone who might have answers about what really happened between Sean and your mother." "Who?" "Frank. My father's driver. He's been with the family for decades. And according to these notes," Alexander tapped the file, "he was particularly close to Sean." Emma hesitated, glancing at her mother. "I'll arrange private nursing care for your mother," Alexander promised, reading her concern. "The best available." "I don't need charity," Patricia began. But Emma gently took her hand. "Mom, this isn't about charity. It's about safety. Yours and mine." Emma's voice was firm but gentle. "If they're willing to destroy my career over this, what else might they do?" Patricia studied her daughter's face, then nodded slowly. "You have your father's determination," she said softly. "Sean was always so passionate about doing what was right, no matter the cost. Emma and Alexander exchanged surprised glances. "You knew Sean?" Emma asked. "I met him once," Patricia admitted. "When Megan was pregnant with you, he came looking for her, but she was already gone. Your grandmother had sent her away." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. He was so desperate to find her, so in love. Alexander's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Found the security footage. You need to see this. Coming to your place now. Change of plans," he announced, showing Emma the message. "Sarah's bringing evidence directly to us." Emma nodded, her face set with determination. Whatever secrets had been buried all these years, she was finally going to uncover them. And with them, the truth about what really happened to Robert Parker under her care. Sarah Thompson arrived an hour later, her nurse's scrubs hidden beneath a nondescript jacket. She carried a plain USB drive like it contained state secrets. "I had to call in every favor I've earned in 15 years, she said, embracing Emma briefly, before nodding to Alexander. "Dr. Parker." Emma made quick introductions to her mother before they gathered around Emma's laptop at the kitchen table. "Before I show you this," Sarah warned, "you need to understand what's at stake. If they discover I accessed this footage, I'll lose more than my job." Alexander's expression was grim. "I give you my word, Sarah. Whatever happens, you'll be protected." Sarah inserted the drive. "The footage covers the 2 hours before Robert Parker's cardiac event. I've already reviewed it." The video showed Robert's hospital room from a high corner angle. The timestamp indicated it was 2:14 p.m., about 40 minutes before the code blue was called. The room was empty except for Robert, who appeared to be sleeping. At 2:17, Stephanie entered, glancing cautiously around before approaching Robert's bedside. She checked his IV, then looked toward the door again. "She's waiting for someone," Emma murmured. At 2:19, Dr. Reynolds entered, carrying what appeared to be a medication bag. He and Stephanie spoke briefly, their backs to the camera. Reynolds then removed something from his pocket and added it to the IV drip, while Stephanie adjusted the electronic monitoring equipment. "They're tampering with his medications," Alexander said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "And the monitoring system." At 2:23, they both left. The room remained empty until 2:31, when Emma entered to perform her regular check. The footage clearly showed her surprise at the readings, her quick examination of Robert, and her concerned adjustment of the equipment. "I knew something was wrong," Emma said. The readings didn't match his presentation. At 2:37, Reynolds returned with Emma, now visibly giving instructions. Emma could be seen questioning him, gesturing to the chart. Reynolds pointed firmly at the medication bag. His body language authoritative, Emma reluctantly administered the medication, carefully documenting everything before leaving. At 2:52, Robert began showing signs of distress. By 2:56, he was in full cardiac arrest, and Emma rushed in to begin resuscitation efforts. Sarah paused the footage. The metadata shows this video was never reviewed by hospital security. Someone marked it as equipment malfunction and buried it. The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Alexander was the first to speak. "This is attempted murder," he said flatly. "They deliberately induced cardiac arrest in my father." "But why?" Patricia asked from where she sat watching. "What could be worth attempting to kill your own father-in-law?" "Control of Parker Enterprises," Alexander replied. "With my father incapacitated and me out of the country, operational control would fall to Stephanie as the only adult family member actively involved in the business." "There's more," Sarah said quietly. "When I was getting this footage, I found something else." She opened another file, an email from Reynolds to the hospital board, dated just 2 days before Robert's incident. The message requested board approval for a lucrative partnership between St. Raphael's and a pharmaceutical company called NovaCare Therapeutics. The proposal would grant NovaCare exclusive testing rights for experimental cardiac medications at the hospital in exchange for substantial funding. NovaCare is a subsidiary of Parker Enterprises, Alexander explained, his expression darkening. "A research division my father was planning to sell because their trials weren't yielding results. Reynolds must have convinced Stephanie they could save it and make themselves rich in the process," Emma added. Sarah nodded. Reynolds has been pushing clinicians to enroll more patients in NovaCare trials. The pressure's been intense. Emma stood abruptly, pacing the small kitchen. So they tried to kill Robert to gain control of Parker Enterprises and push through the NovaCare deal. But why frame me? Why not just let his death appear natural? Alexander's eyes met hers. Because of what my father discovered about you. The apartment fell silent as the pieces clicked into place. If Robert acknowledged me as Sean's daughter, Emma began, you'd be entitled to a significant portion of the Parker fortune. Alexander finished. Stephanie couldn't risk that. She needed you discredited and removed from the picture entirely. Patricia's frail voice broke the silence. All these years, I thought we were protecting Emma by keeping her adoption secret, but we were just helping that woman bury the truth. Emma knelt beside her mother's chair. You did protect me. You gave me a home, an education, love. That's what matters. Your mother's right, though, Alexander said. My mother, Catherine, went to extraordinary lengths to hide your existence, not just from the public, but from Sean himself. But why? Emma asked. What was so terrible about Sean having a child? Alexander hesitated. I think it has to do with Logan. Who's Logan? Stephanie's son. He's 19 now, which means, Alexander calculated quickly, Stephanie would have been pregnant with him around the same time your biological mother was pregnant with you. Emma's eyes widened. You think Sean was involved with both women? It's possible. Sean and Stephanie dated briefly before she married my older half-brother James, Logan's official father. Alexander ran a hand through his hair. James died when Logan was 5. Cancer. Stephanie has been part of the family business ever since. So if I appeared as Sean's legitimate child, Logan's position as the youngest Parker heir would be threatened, Alexander confirmed. Especially if there were questions about his paternity. Sarah, who had been examining the files further, suddenly straightened. There's something else here you need to see. She pulled up another document, a DNA comparison. This was in a folder marked confidential on the same server. It's a paternity test for Logan Brooks, comparing his DNA to Sean Parker's. And, Alexander leaned forward, negative match. Sean wasn't Logan's father. Emma absorbed this information, her medical mind working through the implications. So Stephanie has been positioning her son as a Parker heir when he's not actually related to your family at all. It seems that way, Alexander said quietly. Which means her entire claim to the Parker fortune rests on a lie. And if Robert learned this while investigating Emma's connection to Sean, Sarah began, he would have cut Stephanie and Logan out completely. Alexander finished. No wonder she was desperate enough to attempt murder. Emma returned to the table, studying the photographs in the file. Her eyes lingered on one showing a young, smiling woman with a baby. My mother, she whispered. Megan, what happened to her? Is she still alive? Alexander's expression softened with regret. According to my father's investigation, she died 5 years ago, car accident in Oregon. The news hit Emma like a physical blow. She'd been harboring a secret hope of one day meeting this woman, this stranger, whose blood ran in her veins, whose eyes she saw every time she looked in a mirror. I'll never know her, she said softly. But she left you something, Patricia said, struggling to stand. Something I should have given you years ago. She disappeared into her bedroom, returning with a small wooden box. This came with you. I was supposed to destroy it, but I couldn't. It's from your real mother. Emma opened the box with trembling hands. Inside lay a journal bound in soft leather, a strand of dried flowers pressed between its pages, and a letter in a sealed envelope addressed simply, to my daughter, when she's ready to know the truth. As Emma's fingers touched the envelope, she felt an almost electric connection to this woman she'd never known. This mother who had been forced to give her away, but had somehow found a way to reach across time and speak to her. I'll give you some privacy, Alexander said. Standing, Sarah and I will go over the security footage again. Prepare it for the authorities. Emma barely heard him. Her world had narrowed to the letter in her hands. The answers to questions she hadn't even known to ask until days ago. Read it, Patricia encouraged, her eyes bright with unshed tears. It's time you knew who you really are. With a deep breath, Emma broke the seal and unfolded the pages. The handwriting was flowing and elegant, the ink slightly faded with age. My dearest daughter, it began. "If you're reading this, then you're finally ready to know the truth about your birth, about your father, and about the great love that created you, a love that not even the powerful Parker family could destroy." Emma's hands trembled as she read her mother's words. "I was 22 when I came to work at the Parker mansion, fresh out of college with an art history degree that wouldn't pay the bills. I took the position as Mrs. Parker's personal assistant. The pay was excellent, the work straightforward. What I never expected was Sean. He was different from the rest of them. Warm, genuine, with a laugh that could light up even the coldest rooms of that massive house. We tried to keep our feelings secret, knowing his mother would never approve of the help. For 6 beautiful months, we lived in our own private world of stolen moments and whispered promises. When I discovered I was pregnant, Sean was overjoyed. He wanted to marry me immediately. Family expectations be damned. He even gave me his precious medallion, the one I've left for you, as a promise that we'd be a family. But Catherine Parker discovered our secret. I was dismissed immediately, told that a substantial settlement awaited if I disappeared quietly and terminated the pregnancy. When I refused, things turned ugly. Catherine had evidence fabricated claiming I'd stolen from the family. She threatened to have me imprisoned if I didn't comply with her demands. Sean was sent to Europe suddenly on family business. Catherine told him I'd accepted money to leave, that I'd never really loved him. By the time he returned and discovered the truth, you had already been born, and I had been forced to sign the adoption papers. I have spent every day since then searching for you, fighting the army of lawyers the Parkers set against me. Sean never stopped looking for me, never stopped believing in our love. The medallion you wear is the twin to his. He never took his off, hoping it would somehow lead him back to us." The letter continued, detailing Megan's years-long fight against the Parker family's influence, her brief reconnection with Sean shortly before his death, and her hope that one day her daughter would know the truth. Emma wiped tears from her cheeks, looking up to find Alexander watching her from the doorway, his expression solemn. "She found him again," Emma said. "Just before he died." Alexander nodded. "The accident that killed Sean. It never made sense. He was a careful driver. Despite his wild reputation, my father suspected there was more to the story. According to this, Sean was on his way to meet with a lawyer about challenging my adoption when his car crashed." Emma handed him the letter. "Your mother told him Megan had left willingly, taken money to disappear." Alexander read quickly, his face hardening. "My mother was formidable in protecting what she considered the family's interests." He looked up. "But this goes beyond ruthlessness. This was cruel." A knock at the door startled them all. Sarah, who had been reviewing the security footage again, moved quickly to answer it, checking the peephole first. "It's Frank," she said, looking to Alexander for confirmation. He nodded, and Sarah opened the door to admit the elderly driver who had taken Emma to the Parker mansion months ago. "Dr. Parker," Frank acknowledged, then turned to Emma with a slight bow. "Miss Carter, or should I say Miss Parker?" Emma gestured for him to sit. "You knew, didn't you, all this time?" "I knew Sean was looking for a young woman when he died," Frank said, settling his weathered frame into a chair. "I drove him many places those last weeks. Private investigators, lawyers, even to Queens once or twice. You drove him the night he died," Alexander stated flatly. Frank nodded, his eyes clouding with old grief. "He was excited that night, said he finally had proof that would blow everything wide open," his exact words. "Proof of what?" Emma asked. "I don't know for certain, but he had a file with him. Documents he'd taken from your mother's private safe, Dr. Parker." Alexander leaned forward. "Did you see what was in it?" "No, but after the accident," Frank hesitated. "I was first on the scene, called it in, while waiting for emergency services. I checked on him. The file had spilled open. And," Alexander prompted, "there were photos of a baby. You, I suppose, Miss Carter, and what looked like banking records." Frank's gaze turned distant with memory. "Sean was still conscious, briefly. He pressed his medallion into my hand, told me to find her and tell her the truth. Then the ambulance arrived. And in the chaos, the file disappeared." Alexander finished grimly. "Yes, sir. Police said they never found it." Emma exchanged a look with Alexander. "Stephanie," they said simultaneously. "She was at the hospital that night," Frank confirmed. "Arrived before anyone else somehow. had access to Sean's personal effects. The pieces were falling into place with chilling clarity. Sarah, who had been silently processing all this, suddenly looked up from her laptop. "I think I found something else," she said. "The hospital keeps records of all visitors. The night before Robert Parker's cardiac event, Stephanie Brooks accessed his room at 2 a.m., outside normal visiting hours. With Reynolds?" Alexander asked. "No, with Logan," Emma frowned. "Her son? Why would she bring him?" "Perhaps to remind Robert what was at stake," Alexander suggested. "The future of the Parker name, as she sees it." Emma's phone rang suddenly. "Mrs. Gonzalez, one of her underground patients," she answered quickly, her face growing serious. "I'll be right there," she promised before hanging up. "Mrs. Gonzalez says there are people at her apartment asking questions. A woman matching Stephanie's description and 2 men who look like private security. They're closing in," Alexander said grimly. "We need to move now." "I need to warn my patients first," Emma insisted. "These people trust me." "There's no time," Alexander argued. "If Stephanie finds you, I won't abandon vulnerable people who depend on me," Emma stated firmly. "Not everyone has the luxury of private health care and legal protection, Dr. Parker." Something in her tone made Alexander pause. He studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right, and that's exactly why my father recognized something special in you." His voice softened. "Something worthy of the Parker name." The unexpected compliment caught Emma off guard. Before she could respond, Patricia spoke up from where she had been quietly observing. "She gets that from her father," the older woman said. "Sean had that same sense of justice, that same heart." A moment of understanding passed between Alexander and Emma's adoptive mother, a shared recognition of the legacy that connected them all. "Frank can take you to warn your patients," Alexander decided. "Sarah and I will gather the evidence and meet you at my father's house in 2 hours." "Your father's house?" Emma questioned. "Won't that be the first place Stephanie looks?" "Exactly," Alexander replied with grim determination. "It's time we stopped running and confronted this head-on. My father is still chairman of the board, still legally in control of Parker Enterprises despite his condition. If we can get him to confirm your identity..." "He's barely conscious," Sarah reminded him. "But responsive enough to recognize Emma," Alexander countered. "If we can document that recognition officially, it establishes reasonable doubt about Stephanie's claims." Emma considered the risks, then nodded decisively. 2 hours, but I need to stop at St. Raphael's first." "That's too dangerous," Alexander protested. "There's something there I need," Emma insisted. "Something that might help Robert remember." Understanding dawned on Alexander's face. "The medallion, the one he was examining the day he collapsed. If they match like Megan's letter says, seeing them together might trigger his awareness." Emma's medical training gave weight to her theory. Memory is complex, but powerful emotional connections can sometimes break through even severe impairment. Alexander hesitated, then nodded. "I'll create a diversion at the hospital. Reynolds is scheduled for a board meeting at 4 p.m. That should keep him occupied while you retrieve it." "I know where Robert kept it," Frank offered. "In a hidden compartment in his bedside table. Old habit from his military days, keeping important things close." They quickly formed a plan, with Sarah agreeing to use her hospital access to help Emma, while Alexander gathered the legal documentation they would need. As they prepared to leave, Emma took one last look at the letter from her biological mother. The final lines resonated with new significance. "Whatever happens, know that you were born from love, a love powerful enough to threaten one of the most influential families in America. That strength runs in your blood. My daughter, never forget it." With renewed determination, Emma tucked the medallion securely around her neck. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of her true inheritance. Not the Parker fortune, but the courage of the parents who had loved her enough to defy a dynasty. St. Raphael Medical Center's familiar glass entrance loomed before Emma like the gateway to a battlefield. She squared her shoulders, adjusting the borrowed scrubs and ID badge Sarah had provided, belonging to a nurse of similar appearance currently on vacation. "Remember, you have 15 minutes max," Sarah murmured, guiding her through a service entrance. Reynolds should be in his meeting, but Stephanie could be anywhere. They navigated the back corridors, avoiding the main nursing stations where Emma might be recognized. The VIP floor was eerily quiet when they arrived, with only a single nurse at the central desk, focused on her computer. "Wait here," Sarah whispered, approaching the desk with a manufactured question about medication protocols. As the nurse turned to check something, Emma slipped past, heart pounding. Robert Parker's room number had changed. A security measure, Alexander had explained, but Frank's instructions led her to the correct door. She hesitated only briefly before entering, prepared for the worst. The sight that greeted her was somehow both expected and shocking. Robert lay motionless, surrounded by monitors, looking far frailer than when she'd last seen him. His once commanding presence had diminished to a shadow. Emma moved silently to his bedside, medical training automatically assessing his condition. His breathing was labored but stable, vitals maintained by the array of equipment surrounding him. "Mr. Parker," she whispered, touching his hand gently. "It's Emma." No response. She hadn't really expected one. Moving quickly to the bedside table, she located the hidden compartment Frank had described, a small recess behind the drawer that opened with gentle pressure on the right spot. Inside lay the gold medallion, identical to the silver one she wore except for its material, and a small engraving on the back. "To Sean, my son, find your own path. ARP." As Emma reached for it, Robert's monitors suddenly beeped with increased activity. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused but searching. "Emma." His voice was barely audible. A dry whisper. She moved closer, instinctively taking his hand. "I'm here, Mr. Parker." His fingers tightened weakly around hers. "Found you, Sean's girl." "Yes," she confirmed, emotion tightening her throat. "I know the truth now." A ghost of a smile touched his lips before his eyes drifted closed again. The monitors stabilized, showing he'd fallen back into unconsciousness. Emma quickly pocketed the gold medallion and turned to leave, only to find Stephanie Brooks blocking the doorway. Well, Stephanie said, her carefully maintained composure barely masking her fury. "The disgraced nurse returns to the scene of her crime." Emma kept her voice steady. "The only crime committed here was against your father-in-law, by you and Dr. Reynolds." "Such imagination," Stephanie laughed coldly. "An illegal entry, wearing a stolen ID. You really are determined to destroy yourself, aren't you?" "We have the security footage," Emma stated bluntly. "The real footage showing you and Reynolds tampering with Robert's medication." Something flickered in Stephanie's eyes, brief uncertainty, before her mask of confidence returned. "Footage that mysteriously appeared after being declared corrupted? No one will believe that. They will when it's accompanied by Robert's official statement acknowledging me as Sean's daughter." This hit home. Stephanie's perfect veneer cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. "He's barely conscious, hardly competent to make such declarations. Yet coherent enough to recognize me," Emma countered, "to remember the truth he discovered." Stephanie moved further into the room, letting the door close behind her. "And what truth is that? Some fantasy about Sean and a housemaid. How pathetically cliché." "You knew," Emma realized. Studying Stephanie's reaction, "You knew about me all along. Catherine told me everything when I married James." Stephanie's voice hardened. "Insurance," she called it. "Knowledge to protect the family interests against complications. Like Sean finding his child," Emma guessed. "Or discovering that Logan isn't his son after all." The direct hit landed with precision. Stephanie's composed facade completely shattered. "Don't you dare mention my son," she hissed. "Logan is more deserving of the Parker name than you could ever be. But he's not a Parker by blood," Emma pressed. "And you've built your entire position on that lie." Stephanie moved with unexpected speed, blocking Emma's path to the door. "You think you can just appear after 30 years and claim what belongs to my son, what I've spent decades securing? I don't want your money," Emma said truthfully. "I want justice. For myself, for Sean, for Megan, and for Robert." "How noble," Stephanie sneered. "But I don't believe you. No one walks away from billions, especially not someone from your background." Before Emma could respond, the door opened again. This time, a young man entered, tall, with carefully styled hair and expensive clothes that somehow didn't quite suit him. His eyes, wide with confusion, moved between the two women. "Mom, what's going on?" Logan Brooks asked. "The security guy you sent said it was urgent." Emma immediately recognized the setup. Stephanie had summoned her son deliberately to witness whatever was about to unfold. "Logan, call security," Stephanie ordered. "This woman is the nurse who nearly killed your grandfather. She's broken in to finish the job." The young man hesitated, studying Emma with uncertain eyes. "She doesn't look like a killer." "Appearances deceive," Stephanie insisted, moving to the emergency call button by Robert's bed. "She's dangerous and unstable," Emma addressed Logan directly. "Your mother and Dr. Reynolds deliberately sabotaged your grandfather's treatment and framed me for it. They did it to prevent him from changing his will to include me, Sean Parker's daughter." Logan's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Uncle Sean's daughter. She's lying," Stephanie interjected quickly. "She's invented this preposterous story to claim a share of your inheritance." "Ask her about the DNA test," Emma challenged. "Ask her why Catherine Parker paid my adoptive parents to keep me hidden all these years." Logan turned to his mother, uncertainty creeping into his features. "Mom," for a moment. Stephanie seemed at a loss, then her expression hardened with resolve. "Logan, trust me. Everything I've ever done has been to protect your future, your position. By attempting murder," Emma pressed, "by destroying my career." "You have no proof," Stephanie snapped, finger hovering over the call button. "Actually, we do." Alexander Parker stood in the doorway, phone in hand. "I've just been on a conference call with the hospital board. They've reviewed the security footage Sarah provided. The real footage showing you and Reynolds tampering with my father's medication." Stephanie's composure completely collapsed. "You can't possibly—" "Reynolds confessed," Alexander continued coldly. "When confronted with the evidence, he folded remarkably quickly. Seems he values his medical license more than his loyalty to you." Logan stared at his mother in horror. "What did you do?" "What I had to do." Stephanie's control finally shattered. "That old man was going to destroy everything I've built, everything I've secured for you." "By acknowledging his granddaughter," Alexander asked pointedly. "By destroying Logan's birthright." Stephanie's voice rose hysterically. "I worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let some nobody from Queens take what belongs to my son." The room fell silent. Logan's face reflected dawning comprehension of the truth he'd never been allowed to see. "Mom," he said quietly, "what exactly did you do to grandfather?" Before Stephanie could answer, hospital security appeared in the doorway behind Alexander. "Perfect timing," Alexander told them. "Please escort Mrs. Brooks to the conference room. The board and police are waiting to speak with her." As security moved toward her, Stephanie's eyes darted desperately around the room, seeking escape, finding none. She lunged suddenly toward Emma with unexpected violence. "You ruined everything!" she shrieked, hands outstretched like claws. Emma sidestepped the attack, her nurse's training allowing her to restrain Stephanie without harming her. The security guards quickly took over, leading the now sobbing woman away. Logan stood frozen, shock evident on his young face. "I had no idea," he whispered. "All these years, she said she was protecting the family legacy. Protecting me." Emma felt an unexpected surge of compassion for this young man, technically her cousin, whose entire identity had just been upended. "She did love you," Emma said gently. "In her way." Alexander stepped forward, placing a hand on Logan's shoulder. "Family is complicated, Logan, but we're still your family." Regardless of blood, as they spoke, a slight movement from the bed caught their attention. Robert Parker's eyes were open again, clearer this time. His gaze moved between them, recognition dawning slowly. "Alexander," he whispered. "You found her." Alexander moved to his father's side. "Yes, Dad. I found Emma." Robert's weathered hand reached out weakly. Emma stepped forward, placing both medallions, gold and silver, in his palm. "Sean's girl," he murmured, a tear tracking down his wrinkled cheek. "You have his eyes. And his heart," Alexander added softly, as Robert drifted back to sleep. Still clutching the medallions, Emma felt something shift inside her, a sense of belonging she'd never known she was missing. Whatever came next, she was no longer alone in her fight for justice. The next 48 hours passed in a surreal blur. Stephanie and Reynolds were formally charged with attempted murder and evidence tampering. The hospital board convened an emergency session to discuss the implications, while lawyers from every corner of the Parker empire scrambled to assess the damage. Emma watched it unfold from a strange middle distance, neither fully part of the Parker world nor separate from it. She'd moved her mother to a private suite in Robert's mansion at Alexander's insistence, though Patricia had protested the unnecessary extravagance, until Emma gently explained the practical benefits for her medical care. On the third morning, Emma sat beside Robert's hospital bed, reviewing his charts. His condition had stabilized remarkably since Stephanie's removal, though he remained largely unconscious, waking only for brief, often confused moments. "Any change?" Alexander asked, entering with 2 coffee cups and dark circles under his eyes. Emma accepted the coffee gratefully. "His numbers are improving. Brain activity is stronger today." Alexander nodded, settling into the chair opposite. "The board meeting is set for 2 o'clock. They want you there." "Why? I'm not family. Not officially." "You are by blood," Alexander countered. "And my father clearly recognized you. That carries significant weight." Emma sipped her coffee, considering, "What about my license? The allegations against me?" Being addressed as we speak, with Reynolds' confession and the video evidence, the nursing board is expediting the review. Alexander's gaze was steady. "Your professional reputation will be restored." "Emma, I promise you that." A soft knock interrupted them. Logan stood hesitantly in the doorway, looking younger than his 19 years in simple jeans and a sweatshirt, a stark contrast to the designer clothes he'd worn previously. "Is it okay if I come in?" he asked, his usual confidence notably absent. Alexander gestured him forward. "Of course." Logan approached the bed, studying his grandfather's face. "The doctors downstairs said he's doing better." "He is," Emma confirmed. "His body is healing. It's just a matter of time before—" A sudden change in the monitors interrupted her. Robert's breathing pattern shifted, his eyelids fluttering. "Grandfather." Logan leaned closer. Robert's eyes opened slowly, clearer than they had been since before the incident. His gaze moved from Logan to Alexander, then settled on Emma with unmistakable recognition. "All here," he murmured, voice weak but coherent. "Good." Emma quickly checked his vitals. Professional training taking over. "Mr. Parker, do you know where you are?" "Hospital." His lips curved slightly. "And it's Robert to families, Emma." Alexander moved to the other side of the bed. "Dad, how much do you remember?" "Enough." Robert's hand moved weakly toward Emma. "The medallions." She placed them in his palm, the gold one that had been Sean's, and her silver one. "Matched set," Robert said softly. "Had them made when the boys were born. Gold for the eldest, silver for the youngest." His fingers traced the engravings. "Catherine gave Sean's to Megan after he died. Said it would tie up loose ends. Didn't know she'd already given you the silver one." "How did you find out about me?" Emma asked. "Accident," Robert admitted. "Found old letters in Catherine's things after she died. Started investigating. When I saw your medallion at the hospital, knew immediately." His breathing grew more labored with the effort of speaking. "Save your strength," Alexander urged. Robert shook his head stubbornly. "No time. Board meeting today. Need to make it official." "Dad, you're in no condition." "Video call," Robert insisted. "Need to be there. Need to acknowledge Emma, publicly." Emma exchanged concerned glances with Alexander. "Medically speaking, it's not advisable. Not negotiable," Robert stated with a flash of the commanding presence that had built his empire. "Waited too long already. Nearly died before making things right." Before they could argue further, Dr. Winters, the new attending physician who had replaced Reynolds, entered for rounds. "Well, this is an improvement," he remarked, noting Robert's consciousness. "How are you feeling, Mr. Parker?" "Like someone tried to kill me," Robert replied dryly. "Need to attend a board meeting this afternoon, video call." Dr. Winters frowned. "I wouldn't recommend—" "Not asking for recommendations," Robert interrupted. "Asking for what's needed to make it happen." The doctor looked to Alexander, who shrugged slightly. "You know how he is," after a thorough examination. Dr. Winters reluctantly agreed that a brief video appearance wouldn't endanger Robert's condition, provided he remained monitored and ended the call at the first sign of distress. As the doctor left, Robert beckoned Logan closer. "Sorry about your mother," he said simply. "Not your fault." Logan's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I didn't know what she was doing, I swear." "Course not," Robert assured him. "You're still family, boy. Nothing changes that." The simple declaration seemed to lift a weight from Logan's shoulders. He straightened slightly, nodding with newfound resolve. "I'll be there," he promised, at the board meeting. 2 hours later, Emma found herself in the imposing boardroom of Parker Enterprises, seated beside Alexander at an enormous mahogany table. Around them, 12 board members, mostly older men in expensive suits, eyed her with barely concealed curiosity. At the head of the table, a large screen displayed Robert from his hospital bed. Looking remarkably composed despite his condition, Sarah Thompson stood discreetly beside him, monitoring his vitals. "Let's get to the point," Robert began without preamble. "Recent events have necessitated significant changes to the company's leadership structure. Dr. Reynolds and Stephanie Brooks have been removed from all positions pending criminal proceedings." Murmurs circulated around the table, though no one seemed particularly surprised given the media coverage of the arrests. "More importantly," Robert continued, "I'm officially acknowledging Emma Carter as my granddaughter, the biological daughter of my late son, Sean Parker." This announcement generated clear shock. One board member, braver than the others, raised his hand. "Mr. Parker, with all due respect, this is quite sudden. Is there any verification of this claim?" "DNA testing confirms it," Alexander replied, sliding folders toward each member. "Along with substantial documentary evidence compiled by my father's investigators, the circumstances of Emma's birth and subsequent adoption were complicated," Robert added, his gaze directly meeting Emma's across the video link. "My late wife took steps to conceal Emma's existence, even from Sean himself, actions I deeply regret not discovering sooner." The room fell silent as the board members processed this information. "As such," Robert continued, strength returning to his voice, "I am amending the family trust to include Emma as a full beneficiary, with all rights and privileges accorded to Parker descendants." One of the older board members cleared his throat. "And what of Mrs. Brooks's son, Logan? His position has been substantial in company planning." "Logan remains my grandson in every way that matters," Robert stated firmly. "His position within the company will depend on his own merits and choices, as it should." As if on cue, Logan entered the boardroom, taking a seat at the far end of the table. His expression was solemn but determined. "Furthermore," Robert pressed on, "I am appointing Alexander as interim CEO. Effective immediately, Emma will join the board of the Parker Foundation, overseeing our healthcare initiatives." Emma started to protest. "Robert, I'm not qualified." "You're exactly qualified," Robert countered. "A medical professional with experience serving those without access to proper care. Precisely what the Foundation needs." Before further discussion could unfold, Robert's strength visibly began to wane. Sarah stepped forward, signaling to Alexander. "That's enough for now," Alexander announced, rising. "My father needs rest. We'll reconvene tomorrow to address operational details." As the board members filed out, Emma remained seated, processing everything that had just occurred. In less than a week, she had gone from disgraced nurse struggling to support her mother to acknowledged heir of one of the country's largest fortunes. "Overwhelming, isn't it?" Logan asked, approaching hesitantly after the room had emptied. Emma nodded. "I never wanted this. Any of it." "I believe you," he said simply, "which probably makes you the only person in the Parker orbit who isn't after something." A small smile touched Emma's lips. "I wouldn't say that. I do want something." "What?" "Justice," she replied, "and the chance to do some real good with the resources your grandfather is offering." Logan studied her with newfound respect. "You really are like Uncle Sean, at least from what I've heard about him." As they spoke, Alexander returned from seeing the board members out. "Dad's asking for you," he told Emma. "Said there's one more thing he needs to discuss privately." Emma found Robert looking exhausted but oddly peaceful when she returned to his hospital room. Sarah discreetly stepped out, leaving them alone. "You did well," Emma told him, adjusting his oxygen. "Long overdue," Robert replied. "But there's more. Something you need to know about Sean's accident. It wasn't entirely accidental." Emma stilled. "What do you mean?" "Started investigating after finding Catherine's papers. Brake lines on Sean's car." Robert's voice faded momentarily. "Someone tampered with them. A chill ran through Emma. "Do you know who?" Robert's eyes met hers, filled with old grief and new determination. "Not yet, but we will. Truth deserves to come out. All of it." As she sat beside this man, her grandfather, Emma felt the weight of a legacy she'd never asked for settling on her shoulders. Not just the Parker name or fortune, but the long-buried secrets and unresolved injustices that came with it. 6 months later, Emma stood at the podium before a crowd of journalists, medical professionals, and city officials. Behind her, the sleek glass facade of the newly established Parker Cardiac Institute gleamed in the autumn sunlight. "Today marks not just the opening of a new medical facility," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "but the fulfillment of a vision, one that believes quality cardiac care should be available to every patient, regardless of their ability to pay." From the front row, Alexander watched with evident pride, while Logan sat beside him, looking more comfortable in his own skin than he had months ago. Patricia was there too, her oxygen tank discreetly hidden beside her wheelchair, her eyes bright with emotion. The Parker Cardiac Institute will serve as both a research center for innovative treatments and a teaching hospital, with 50% of beds reserved for patients who would otherwise lack access to specialized cardiac care. The applause that followed felt surreal. Emma's gaze drifted to the empty seat beside Alexander. Robert's seat. Though he had recovered enough to leave the hospital, today's excitement had proven too taxing. He was watching the ceremony via private live stream from the mansion. After the ribbon cutting and requisite handshaking, Emma escaped to the quiet of her new office. The framed credentials on the wall still surprised her. Her nursing license, formally reinstated with apologies from the board. Alongside her new title, Director of Community Cardiac Services, Alexander found her there, contemplating the view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Quite a change from your underground clinic in Queens," he observed, closing the door behind him. Emma smiled. "I still go back once a week. Back. Some patients won't trust anyone else. Loyalty runs both ways." Alexander moved beside her. "Dad's asking for you. Says he has something important to discuss before tonight's board meeting." The drive to the Parker mansion was familiar now, though Emma still felt a flutter of disbelief each time the gates opened to admit her. 6 months hadn't erased the strangeness of her new reality. She found Robert in his study, surrounded by papers and looking more like himself than he had in weeks. His recovery had been painstaking but steady, his determination to see his plans through providing powerful motivation. "There she is," he said warmly as Emma entered. "The woman of the hour." "Hardly. I just gave a speech. The real work begins tomorrow." Exactly what Sean would have said. Robert gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Which brings me to why I asked you here." He pushed a leather-bound folder toward her. "The investigation into Sean's accident is complete." Emma's heart quickened. This was the final piece of the puzzle they'd been pursuing. The truth about her father's death. "And?" she asked, not touching the folder yet. "It was murder," Robert confirmed grimly. The brake lines were deliberately cut. Professional job, made to look like mechanical failure. Emma had suspected as much since their conversation in the hospital. But the confirmation still hit hard. Do we know who? Not directly. The actual saboteur was a mechanic with gambling debts who died 3 years ago. Robert tapped the folder. But the money trail leads to a shell company associated with NovaCare Therapeutics. Reynolds and Stephanie, Emma concluded, pieces clicking into place. Indirectly, yes. Reynolds was chief researcher at NovaCare before joining St. Raphael's. The timing aligns with when Sean was investigating his mother's secret payments. Emma finally opened the folder, scanning the meticulous investigation. He was getting close to discovering the truth about me, and threatening Catherine's carefully constructed narrative. Robert's expression darkened. My wife had convinced Stephanie that Sean's child, you, would threaten Logan's position when Sean started asking questions. They silenced him. Emma finished, a cold clarity settling over her. Does this change the criminal case against them? It will. The prosecutor is reviewing the evidence now. Robert leaned back, studying her. How does it feel, knowing the truth at last? Emma considered the question carefully. Complicated. I'm grateful to understand what happened, but it doesn't bring him back. Doesn't change the fact that I never knew him. But you carry him with you, Robert said gently. His compassion. His sense of justice. I see it every day. A knock at the door interrupted them. Logan entered, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Sorry to interrupt, grandfather. I can come back." "No, come in." Robert gestured him forward. "Emma and I were just finishing." Logan nodded to Emma, then addressed his grandfather. "I wanted to talk to you about something, about my future at Parker Enterprises." Robert's eyebrow rose. "Go on." "I don't want to be on the executive track anymore." Logan spoke quickly, as if fearing interruption. "I've been volunteering at the Institute in patient services, and I want to apply to nursing school." The announcement clearly surprised Robert. Emma tried to hide her own shock. "Nursing?" Robert repeated. "I know it's not what Mom planned for me," Logan continued, his words tumbling out. "But after everything that happened, seeing what Emma does, how she connects with patients, I want that kind of purpose." A smile slowly spread across Robert's face. Sean would have approved. "You're not disappointed?" Logan asked uncertainly. "Disappointed that my grandson wants to dedicate his life to helping others?" Robert shook his head. "Never." Later, as Emma and Logan walked together toward the main hall where the board meeting would soon begin, he turned to her with unexpected vulnerability. "Do you think I can do it, really? After everything my mother did?" Emma considered him thoughtfully. "You're not defined by her actions, Logan. You get to choose your own path. Like you did," he observed, "even when they tried to destroy you." Before Emma could respond, Alexander approached. Tablet in hand, "You both need to see this." He showed them a news alert. Stephanie Brooks had accepted a plea deal, confessing to conspiracy in both Robert's near-fatal cardiac event and involvement in covering up Sean Parker's murder. In exchange, she would receive a reduced sentence of 8 years. Reynolds refused the same deal, Alexander added, still claiming limited involvement. His trial starts next month. Emma absorbed this news with mixed emotions. Justice was being served, but at tremendous cost to everyone involved. The board meeting that followed focused on the future, the Institute's operations, the Foundation's expanded mission, and new transparency measures for all Parker Enterprises. Throughout the discussions, Emma found herself watching the interactions between Robert, Alexander, and Logan, 3 generations navigating a transformed family dynamic. When the meeting concluded, Robert asked Emma to stay behind. Once they were alone, he handed her an elegant wooden box. "I had these made," he explained as she opened it. Inside lay 3 medallions, gold, silver, and a new platinum one, all bearing the Parker family crest. "The gold was Sean's," Robert explained. "The silver yours, and the platinum is for your mother. Patricia. She may not be a Parker by blood, but she raised you with love and values that put our privileged upbringing to shame." Emotion tightened Emma's throat. This would mean the world to her. "Family isn't just blood," Robert said simply. "It's who stands by you, who shapes you. Patricia is as much family as anyone born to the Parker name." As Emma prepared to leave, Robert added, "There's one more thing. I've established a research fund in Megan's name, dedicated to improving cardiac care for underserved communities." The thoughtful gesture, honoring the woman who had given birth to her, brought unexpected tears to Emma's eyes. "Thank you." That evening, Emma stood on the balcony of her new apartment. The city lights spread before her. She held the 3 medallions, feeling their weight, the weight of the past, present, and future they represented. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "Dinner tomorrow. Dad wants to discuss expanding the Institute model nationally." The message was followed by another. "Also, I'd just like to have dinner with you." Emma smiled, sensing the careful shift in their relationship from reluctant allies to something with potential for more. Her gaze returned to the medallions. The Parker legacy had been built on wealth and power, often wielded ruthlessly. But perhaps, through her, it could be transformed into something else. A legacy of healing, of justice, of compassion. She clasped the silver medallion around her neck, where it had always belonged, not as a symbol of wealth or status, but as a connection to the father she'd never known, and the mother who had fought to protect her. The truth had nearly destroyed her, but in that destruction, she had found not just her true identity, but her true purpose.